Welcome to today's episode of Weather to Watch. It's a mostly hot weather pattern. You can see on the map there's a few blue patches, but most of the country is experiencing the red patches, which is above normal temperatures. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Let's take a look at things here. And the first thing we want to emphasize is the National Satellite Loop, and we see some interesting swirls. Always makes the atmosphere interesting. We got one off the coast of the Carolinas there. Another swirl pretty evident over Wyoming and Montana. We'll dive into those here right now by taking a look at the 500 millibar flow. And what you're seeing is kind of a blocking pattern. What all that means is that you have a low and then a high and then a low. And so that encourages the same type of weather to occur over one area over and over. So we definitely have a low pressure area aloft over the Carolinas, and we have another one spinning out there over Wyoming and even Montana and Idaho too. And those are the two weather makers in terms of temperature and precipitation, although there is a noteworthy area here close to where I live where some thunderstorms are popping up pretty readily. Let's take a closer look at those. I want to emphasize these because there is some flash flooding potential with a few of these storms. Mostly it's the slow movement that's going to cause the rain to rack up. There's even a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings. This was recorded in the 5 o'clock Central Daylight Time hour. Nothing too crazy. There's even another severe thunderstorm warning popping up there north of I-40 there in northeastern panhandle region of Texas. Let's take a look at the surface map. And we do have one front moving here connected to a low pressure area there right along the Canadian border. That was supported by the upper level low that was right here, if you'll recall. This is an occluded system. This is just an occluded, kind of a stationary front that kind of loops back here with this low off the Carolina coast. Remember, there is an upper level feature right there. Take a look at temperatures across the country. They range from a cool 68 in Bangor, Maine, to 72 in New York City, to a little bit of a toasty 81 for Chicago this time of year. Not too bad, but then you start getting into these 90s straight down the Mississippi River Valley, St. Louis, down to around Evansville, 92. Shreveport kind of wins there, at least in the local map, 95. But the hottest temperatures continue to be in the southwestern U.S., but 102 in Phoenix is not all that abnormal for them. In fact, if you look here, you'll see this is the high temperature departure map and also the temperature forecast map for Tuesday. And, Phoenix is 104. That's only about 4 degrees above normal. Big cool patch here in Wyoming and parts of Colorado. I'll talk more about that. This is all rain-induced here from that offshore low you just saw. And there's the hot temperature. So if it's red, it's well above normal. These are getting into 18 degrees above the normal highs for this time of year. So it includes 91 in Des Moines and 90 in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We'll move ahead to Thursday. The heat's releasing its grip a little bit. Remember that upper level low I talked about here? It's moving out into the plains a little bit, but albeit very slowly. But it will have an impact on high temperatures out there on Thursday. Still some coastal rain and also a stall front causing rain in Florida as well. Moving ahead to Saturday's high temperature. Again, this cool area is progressing, but it's doing so at a snail's pace. Every other day, it's only moving about a half state or so. Still hot in the Ohio River Valley. And I wanted to note these temperatures right here in New England. It's the only part of the country except for here and also parts of California that's experiencing very cool temperatures by Saturday with highs only in the upper 50s in parts of northern Maine. I'll switch gear and show you the low temperature for that Saturday. Notice that in upstate New York, 42 degrees. In the northern part of Maine, upper 30s are starting to show up. So that is what leads to this forecast. Temperature hazards map. This is the 3 to 7 day forecast. This is Wednesday through the weekend. And in particular, the 19th and the 20th are what this frost and freeze sort of advisory is looking for. So much of, especially the higher elevations of New York, and also parts of Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont as well. And I do want to point out while I'm on this map that around the 18th, there is a little bit of frost and freeze potential there right along the Rockies and a little bit westward into the high desert regions of western Colorado. Even though I did outline cool pockets as I needed to, still the overall temperature pattern, this is the 21st through the 25th of the month, getting close to the end, still favors a very high chance of above normal temperatures there in the northern plains, kind of mimicking the updated September temperature forecast, which does show a higher confidence of above normal readings up there in Wyoming, Montana, and the Dakotas. But the rest of the country, no real confidence that the temperatures will swing one way or another. Well, looking at rain hazards, we have three real pockets to talk about. You can plainly see where the rain's accumulating over the next 5 days. Let's focus first on this stalled low off the coast of the Carolinas and Virginia. So there is about a slight risk, 15% chance of some of those storms exceeding flash flood guidance in areas around Greenville and much of maybe almost to Rocky Mount, almost to Norfolk, and into the island areas of North Carolina there. And then it shifts a little on Tuesday. That's because this is the official rain forecast for that area. If you see yellow, that's a 4-inch total, and even some 6-inch totals, as you can see at the scale down there, it might be in the middle of that. So yeah, it's all justified for slow moving, well efficient producing rain systems moving through that area. And as you saw, they're in no particular hurry to leave, as is nothing across the country. Remember that blocking pattern I talked about? Just means everything is either going to stay the same or move very, very slowly. Look at this. West Palm Beach over the next 5 days is going to receive 5 inches of rain. Thankfully, that'll be spread out a little bit. Miami, 4.5, not to be left out. So again, stalled fronts and a persistent upper level feature is going to squeeze rainfall out of that system. Then the northern plains, a little less focused on the next 5 days, but you're still seeing a little bit of 2-3 inch totals there through parts of Minnesota and South Dakota. Maybe 2-3 inch totals through parts of the Sand Hills there in Nebraska as well. And in fact, the heavy rain hazard 3 to 7 day forecast through the 18th. So today's the 15th. This is Thursday, basically, is still highlighting this heavy rain potential there. And in that same area I showed you in the 5-day forecast, basically the Everglades, Miami, up to West Palm Beach, but as far north as almost up to Daytona. Actually, I think it does include Daytona. And we're looking at the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. A fairly high confidence is going to be wet in the southeast, pretty dry across the northern plains. Again, that's beyond the heavy rain hazard I showed you there. This is what happens after that. And then the highest rain confidence of all of it being above normal is in the Pacific Northwest for the most of early next week. And just to note, the September updated rain forecast does include a high level of confidence from Kansas into Iowa and in southern Miami. So that's interesting. So they're saying over the next 2 weeks, something's going to redevelop down in this area as well. Not much of a severe weather threat. It's calming down. I'll show you some maps here that I think you'll find interesting. First of all, let's just focus on what's actually going on. We're talking about a marginal risk. That's the level 1 in 3 distinct pockets, as you can see on the map there, including some of those storms I showed you on radar that were indeed producing a few severe thunderstorm warnings in Missouri. And then day 2, Tuesday, Nebraska, parts of Kansas, maybe a little bit of South Dakota. Again, nothing too exciting and nothing really exciting beyond this. Now, the SPC forecast day 1 through day 8, and they're not seeing a thing. Not surprising, because this is the climatology of it all. This is any severe probabilities from the period 1982 through 2011, focused around the 16th of September, you see on the top there. And the only probabilities at all are showing up here, and they are pretty meager. Now, keep that snapshot in mind. That's valid about now. Let's back up to May, same time period, middle part of May. Whoa, the severe weather probabilities are bullseyed in Oklahoma. Very, very, very different pattern. That's not to say you can't get severe weather in September, but it's looking pretty meager here for a while. And you certainly can't have a secondary season, a peak in the fall. No indication of that yet, but that's something, of course, that Weather to Watch will certainly highlight. Well, the tropical Atlantic is heating up again with a higher 70 or greater probability of something forming out here and actually curving a little bit more westward with time. So that kind of gets you thinking that maybe something's on a trajectory to head into the more densely populated islands or maybe even the United States. Is that true? Well, let's just take a look at a few more things and you tell me. So here's the EFS. This is the European tropical storm probability. So it's, sitting at about 80% right at the end of that forecast period. This is valid this Saturday. And if we look at the same map here for the GFS and the actual 500 millibar flow, which can be used to kind of steer these systems, it is showing the reflection of it at the 500 millibar, whatever forms there. That would be Gabrielle if it does form, by the way. Sitting there. But okay, so it was moving a little more west. So what happens after that? Well, it all depends on what's happening here. So we have a weak trough of low pressure in the central plains. Actually, I would call that moderate, but it's far displaced from the hurricane track. This is strong, so it's going to be a battle to see if this system, if it does form, can squeeze underneath this substantial trough. If it can, it probably won't get much steering to the north. It'll probably continue to go in that direction. So again, this is all fantasy land. This is 5 days away. So it's always the game we play to see if these storms will continue on that track curve, and if they do curve, to what extent will they miss the mainland U.S. or not. Just in case I haven't showed you this in a while, this is what we've been up to here in the Atlantic hurricane season so far. We've had 6 named storms, 1 hurricane, and that happened to be Aaron, and that was a major hurricane for a portion of its lifetime, right where you see that purple right there. Gabrielle would indeed be the next name that we would look to on the list right there. In a season that has a 50-50 chance of being above normal, named storms 13 to 18, we've got a ways to go. We're only at half of the lower end of that range. Hurricanes, again, very low compared to what was forecast, and this is the time of year where we should be seeing. This is the most active zone, and of course, some of that probability gets pretty high along the coastal areas of the southeast. And also we see a flare up in the Gulf sometimes, which has pretty warm temperatures. So there might be something to be had. I mean, everybody focuses out here for big storms. They're easy to track, easy to see, but the sleepers are often down here. If you'll remember, Helene formed last year late in September. Just to reiterate that we're still in the hurricane season, even though we reached the statistical peak a few days ago. We still have a lot of activity that could happen between now and, frankly, the 1st of November. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.